Life is hard sometimes. It throws a lot of things our way. And it's really easy in the middle of life to get to this place to where, gosh, we just begin to question so many things. Before I got to next week, I thought, and I'm going to share some experiences from my past week that really kind of got me to where I am today and where we're going to go next week. Sometimes in the middle of it, it's really easy to become even more selfish than what we are. It becomes more about me in the journey. Today's truth is very simply this: our comfort is not God's priority. Our comfort is not God's priority. I'm going to say it one more time because I can see, man, some of you thinking. Our comfort is not God's priority. This past week, I was privileged to get to spend a few days in San Diego, California. My first time to California, and work took me there. I got another opportunity to go and just be a part of our team investing in others and another Habitat for Humanity build. And I love Habitat for Humanity. If you ever get the opportunity to be a part of a Habitat project, please do so. Very Christian-based, faith-based, and it's just investing in people. And one of the things this is just kind of a little side note one of the things that I really love about Habitat is it's not a handout, it's a hand up. They say that a lot. And I just love the principles that come with it. They're not just building homes to give them away. They're helping people build homes and finance that journey and provide a home for them and their families. And they work hard for it. There's a lot of things that they have to do to be a part of it. And it just aligns so well with a lot of my principles, the principles that I work for, and just an amazing opportunity. And getting to go to this place that I'd never been before. And I was the one that always said, well, I never want to go to California. Don't even care if I visit. It was beautiful. I absolutely loved it. It was great. I loved the downtown area. And, when I first got there, I got off the plane, I walked in my hotel, I dropped my bag, and I just took off. Just took off walking. I just wanted to embrace the culture. I wanted to embrace my surroundings. I wanted to see things and smell things. I could breathe. Oh my goodness, I could breathe. I battled with allergies here, and I remember it was the first, and I noticed it almost immediately, and I stepped off the plane, and it was just like, yeah. And then when I got home, I stepped off the plane and went, But as I walked around that first evening on Monday night, and I was looking at all the buildings and all the stuff, and I ended up down at the harbor, and it was just gorgeous, and I had a wonderful meal, and I was thinking, man, God, you have just blessed me. You have blessed me so well to give me the opportunities to not only experience life and experience others, but to serve you in so many different ways. And I was just, it's great. I just sit back thinking, man, life's great, and this is great. And I was walking down the street, and I was coming back because I took the long way. I ended up walking like 3.5, 4 miles that night. I was exhausted. My legs hurt. I hadn't done that in a while. But as I was walking through town, and you just see all these homeless people. You see people struggling with life. Now, some chose to be there, and I get that. But many didn't. But to see them with smiles on their face, and I'm sure a lot of them that I passed love Jesus. I remember going back to my hotel room that night just thinking, man, I'm blessed. The build day, I ended up at the job site, and the gentleman that was buying one of the houses, one of the requirements, they have to come work. They have to put in like 400, 500 hours of service and working, not only in their house and their home, but in the home of someone else. It's something that promotes servanthood. And so he's there serving with us, and we got to hear his story. And he has a family, and he works hard. He works hard, but, he's just poor. He didn't have a good job, and he just struggled. And the house that they lived in was full of black mold. And their landlord wouldn't do anything about it. He just tell him, just paint over it, it'll be fine. Family was sick, and but he just worked with a smile on his face. You could tell he had joy in his heart. He definitely wasn't comfortable. Life probably was not comfortable for him in that moment, whether, physically, financially, it wasn't comfortable, but yet he still was out working, and he was serving, and he was smiling. And there was a young lady that was a part of the Habitat crew that was there, and she I can't even remember where she told me she came from, Minnesota or something. And she'd been there for 10 months and just serving, and they really weren't paying her a whole lot. She was basically working for nothing, and that's what she was doing. She was serving. And I watched her lead people. I watched her lead our team, and she was very assertive and very driven, and she was very talented, even with construction things in her hands. And I asked her later on in the day, and I said, so why are you here? Because it can't be easy. It's expensive to be out there. I mean, unbelievably expensive. And she said, because I'm supposed to be. No doubt she was uncomfortable. She worked a lot of long days and for very little money, scraped to get by. It was uncomfortable. But yes, she was doing exactly what she was supposed to be doing. At least that's what she said to me. So I walked away from that project feeling very blessed, but also with this truth today. Our comfort is not God's priority. He does not call us into comfort. He calls us to His will, and many times that causes us to be uncomfortable. I mean, if He's going to call us to talk about living in God's will, and we think sometimes that when we're in it, that life is perfect and life is great and everything is wonderful, and the honesty and the reality of that is it's not. In fact, more times than not, it's more than uncomfortable. Think about the disciples. How comfortable were they really? They basically traveled for 3 years. No place to really call home. Were attacked. Even after Jesus died and went back to heaven, they were really attacked. Think about Paul. There was no comfort. He talked about suffering for Christ. Our comfort is not God's priority in our life. You know, at the beginning of every single year, and this happens, and some of us do this, some of us don't, and some people we know, but people stand and proclaim how they're going to change their lives and change their self, and we change our church for the better. We're going to focus more on God and others than ourselves. And I understand it's the fall, and it's not January the 1st. But regardless of when we make these decisions, I'm going to stop doing certain things. I'm going to start doing certain things. I'm going to start giving and tithing. I'm going to start working in the nursery, and our church is going to get more focused on missions, and we're going to love people, and we're going to focus just as much on the outside of these walls as we do on the inside. And I'm going to change things in my life and my priorities. I'm going to read my Bible more, worship more, pray more, love God more. I'm going to do it. I'm going to change. And we hit the ground running, and we're excited, and we tear into all this stuff, and we're successful for a while. But then things change, and we feel ourselves falling back into old habits, losing this desire to maintain our changes, and we slip back into the state of me and the world of I. Because the moment we begin to think that my comfort is God's priority, God, you need to bless me exactly where I'm at, God. You need to make everything perfect. God, make our church perfect. Our church has been on a roll. 5 weeks in a row. 5 weeks in a row. Just like, man, we're just surfing, riding that wave, and it's just amazing. And I'm not saying that just because the tank's not up this morning doesn't mean that this morning is any less amazing or God's wanting to do anything less important in someone's life. Sometimes you worship on a mountain, but sometimes you battle in a valley. Sometimes everything's great up here, and sometimes it's not so great down there. Sometimes suffering lasts for a night, but joy always comes in the morning. Comfort. Comfortable. Sometimes we think we're just going to be comfortable. When we get that way, it's all about me. And that's just really what I want to talk about this morning. This is just a challenge today. Matthew chapter 25. This was Jesus, and he was speaking to a lot of people when he was talking at this particular moment. His disciples were a part of this conversation, but so were the religious of the day. And in verse 35, he says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." In verse 37, then the righteous, or I think really if we dove into that word, it would be the self-righteous. Those that were more focused on themselves answer him and said, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go visit you? Verse 40, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. These verses, nothing in these verses says anything about I or me, except for what's in the middle. The righteous or the religious of this day, I mean, seriously, Jesus said, whatever, you did this to me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I need clothes, you clothed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me, when I was in prison. They said, when did we do that? When did we do that for you? You want to know why they missed all of the stuff that they could have been doing, or the opportunities that they could have had to bless somebody else? Because they were more focused on themselves than they were everyone else around them. When did I do that? You never did do that because you weren't worried about doing that. You weren't concerned about doing that because all you were focused on was yourself. And Jesus, and there's just sometimes I think, and sometimes we think, I think Jesus had a sense of humor. I do. And I think that there probably were times when Jesus stood up and said things in a way that was just like he was without, I just do. That's just how I think. Because after he says, you did this to me, and they were taking it literal. When did we do that to you? And then can't you just see Jesus putting a smile on his face? Just a little bit of a smile thinking, well, when you did that for somebody else, you did it for me. Until Copernicus came along in 1543, we earthlings enjoyed the center stage. Until he came along, everyone could point it to the sky and say that the world revolves around us. The world revolves around this planet that we have been on. Stick a pin in the center of the map, right in the middle of the stars, and you have found us. Everything revolves around the earth. That's what scientifically and culturally people believed up until that time. But then Nicholas Copernicus comes along, messed everything up, because in 1543, just before he died, he released his heliocentric way of thinking and the fact that the sun and not the earth is the center of the universe. And everything revolves around it. He would ask questions like, can anyone tell me what causes the seasons to change? Why do some stars appear in the day and some at night? And does anyone know how far ships can sail before falling off the edge of the earth? And he would point his finger towards the sun and say, behold, the center of the universe. And it ticked people off. It really did. You go back and just study that history. I love history. And you go back and look, it riled people up. Well, how dare you say that we're not in the center? How dare you say that everything doesn't revolve around us? People denied it and actually didn't accept this as truth for over 50 years. It's hard to accept the fact that the world didn't revolve around them. But what Copernicus did for the earth, God does for us in our souls. He points to the sun, his son Jesus, and says, behold, the center of it all. I love these verses in Ephesians chapter 1. Write these down and put these in your memory bank. Because I can promise you that wherever we get in our life and however great things are going, we are not the center of it all. Not you, not me, not anyone else. Not this church, not another church, not any other church. We are not the center. In the Message translation, it says, God raised him, Christ, from death and set him on a throne in deep heaven, in charge of running the universe, everything from galaxies to governments, no name and no power exempt from his rule. And not just for the time being. Oh, I love that. Not just for the time being, but forever. He's in charge of it all, has the final word on everything, at the center of all of it, it's Christ who rules the church. At the center of it all, it's Christ that rules the church. And we can't forget that. Because when God looks at the center of the universe, listen, when God looks at this, and I'm talking about God the Father, when He looks at the center of the universe, does He love us? Absolutely. But when He looks at the center, He's not looking at you or me. He is looking at His Son. Because that's where He's put Him. Smack dab in the middle of it all. When heaven's stagehands direct the spotlight towards the star of the show, me nor you need any sunglasses to reflect that light. Because it's all on Him. Go read Revelations, the last book of the Bible, and you just see exactly. I mean, seriously, it's not on me. We are lesser orbs, if you will. Appreciated, valued, and loved? Most definitely. But the middle? No. Our comfort is not God's priority. If it is, then something went wrong. If we're the primary event, if our comfort is God's priority, then how do we explain things like death and disease and tragedy? How do we explain tough times? If our comfort, if His most important thing was keeping us comfortable, making our lives comfortable, then how? Because if God exists to please us, then shouldn't we always be pleased? Well, it's quiet in here. God doesn't exist to make a big deal out of us. We exist to make a big deal out of Him. Write that down somewhere. Write that down somewhere. Seriously, I don't care. Write it down. Put it in a note in your phone. Stamp it right here. God does not exist to make a big deal out of us. We exist to make a big deal out of Him. That's why we're created. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not even about CPC. It's about Him. It's about Him. I want to go back to astronomy for a second because it really kind of segues me to kind of where we're headed. What does the moon do? We know what the sun does, but think about the moon for a second. Think about what the moon does. Because the moon in itself just sits out there in darkness. It generates no light. It does nothing like that on its own. It's just a pitch black rock. Contrary to the harvest or the song, the harvest moon cannot shine on. But properly positioned in the right place, the moon beams. And this big black clot of dirt in the middle of the universe becomes a giant inspiration to us all. When it is positioned just right. This morning I come up early, drove down 5 highway. As soon as I turned onto Y, it was just like the highway was a funnel directly to that big, bright, full moon. Just barely above the horizon. It was really low. And it was gorgeous. I mean, big, bright, shining. It's just like God said, good morning. But all it was doing was reflecting the light of what's in the center of our universe. Properly positioned. It becomes a source of inspiration, of romance. The moon reflects the greater light, and she's happy to do it, by the way. You never hear the moon complaining. She makes no waves about making waves. Let the cow jump over her and astronauts step on her, and she never objects. Even though sunning is accepted while mooning is the butt of all jokes, you won't hear old cheese face gripe and complain. She does exactly what she was created to do, and that was reflect the light of the sun. She was at peace with that. What would happen if we would accept our place in much the same fashion? Regardless of the seasons in our lives. Think about it. Regardless of the season, regardless of what time of month it is, what day of the week it is, and sometimes the moon is as big and full and bright in its beauty, and sometimes it's dark and you never see it. Sometimes in our lives, man, it's just wonderful and awesome and everything's just full and amazing and it looks great. Sometimes we're kind of half lit. Sometimes we're tipped up. Sometimes we're tipped down. And sometimes life is just so dark. But the moon is reflecting the light somewhere. We're called to not be comfortable. We are called to reflect Jesus. Worship team, come on. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 says, "You're the light of the world." You, me, we are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. And in the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And Jesus here does not say, let your light shine when life is great. He doesn't here say, let your light shine when you are comfortable. He doesn't say, let your light shine because life is going to be wonderful. He just simply says, let it shine. You let it shine when life is great. You let it shine when life is not. Because even though our world may change and our life may change and our circumstances may change, He does not. He does not. Next week. The truth that we're talking about next week is Jesus is always there. He's always there. Even when you don't feel Him. Even when you don't see Him. Even when life is tough. Even when life sucks. He's there. He's there. Even when we're uncomfortable. He's there. He's there. And since He is there in all of those times, we're called to reflect Him. But if we get so focused on me being in the center of it all, then we can't do what we were created to do. We become the ones who put our lights under a bowl and try to keep it to ourselves. But Jesus says to put it on a stand for all to see. But Pastor Ron, I don't want people to see. Do you know it's just as important of how you shine your light when life is not really that good as it is for when it is? In fact, sometimes I would say it's more important. To allow people to see Christ working in your life when things around you aren't all that great. Because I can promise you it speaks wonders to people who might be struggling with exactly what you're struggling with. Or who might be going through what you have been through. And to see that it's possible, to see that they can make it, to see that they can stick to those changes, to see that healing is coming, that peace is coming. And you don't have to play perfect like everything's fine. You don't have to suck it up and not shed a tear or act like, oh, it's fine. You don't have to do that. You can be real and love Jesus and show people how to do the same thing. Say, well, I'm shining my light, I'm doing this. We'll never get to the place where we don't need to get or let go of more of ourselves and pick up more of God. Even John the Baptist said he must become less so Jesus can become greater. Jesus wants all of us The more we decrease to self, the more God increases in our lives. We turn more into who we were created to be. And ultimately help God increase in other people. Sometimes that's hard. We're demanding. Sometimes we've stomped our feet and demanded our way since infancy. But aren't we born with that? I think there's just something inside of us that... And there's nothing wrong with focusing on ourselves as long as we're focusing on ourselves in the right way that pushes us more towards Him. Some people say, I want a family that lets me have my way, and my friends who always agree with me, it's all about me, promote me, take care of me, focus on me, it's all about me. Culture around us urges us to be number one, find our place in the sun, make a name for ourselves. But all it creates is chaos. Because when we think it's all about us, I think it's all about me, then we have no prayer of getting along and no hope of helping others. We end up just like the religious who said, well, when did we do that? When did we feed you? When did we clothe you? When did we visit you? We miss the needs around us. So what would happen if we all took our places and played our parts in this universe that God has created? If we truly decreased so Jesus could increase in our lives, we would see change in our families. Less here is what I want and more what do you suppose God wants for us. You would see change in our attitudes. Less self-absorption and more Christ reflection. In our bodies, it's mine to, and I'm going to enjoy it. Maybe more of it's God's and I'm going to respect it. Change in our suffering. Less my pain proves God's absence and more my pain expands God's purpose. In our giving, less selfishness, more selflessness. And in the message we're sending to people about Christianity, less hypocrisy, more integrity, less doubt, more faith, less condemnation and more acceptance, less judgment and more love, less of me and more of Jesus. Our comfort is not God's priority. We can go into the Bible and we can see, Jesus says, John 14:6, He said, in this world you'll have trouble. In this world you'll have trouble. But take heart. He said, because I've overcome all that. In the middle of that trouble, I'll be there. So while our comfort is not His priority, your life is. Your life is. He loves you that much. He created you with a purpose. And while there will be storms, there will be dark times, there will be mountains and there will be valleys. And there will be many uncomfortable times in your life. But in the middle of those times, He is there. It's not that He will be there, it's He is there. He's there.